Deadly Desire, Day 11. Thank you so much for joining us here at Fox 5 for our continuing coverage of the Brendan Banfield murder trial. Day 11 in Northern Virginia. Bob Barnard taking a little time off, but Fox 5's Sydney Persing in court today. Sydney, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, so some major developments today. The jury has the case officially. However, no verdict yet. We are still going to have to wait a little while, correct?
That is right. So around 12:30.
All right, it looks like we may have lost
jury deliberation. The judge had. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. You're good to go.
I think I might be back. I don't know where you lost me, but Chris, what you said is exactly right. The jury does have the case. The prosecutors and Banfield's defense attorneys wrapped up at around 12:30 with their closing arguments. So that's officially when the jury got the case. They deliberated for about 4 hours. And the judge had already said, we're out at 4:30 today. So that's why it went for about 4 hours. And then they were dismissed. They went home for the weekend. So we're going to have to wait until Monday to find out Brendan Banfield's fate. Obviously, we know, as you said, a lot of people are watching to see whether he walks free or spends up to the rest of his life in prison.
Sydney, talk us through some of those closing arguments. The prosecution went first, told jurors that Brendan Banfield not only killed his wife, but killed Joe Ryan as well, and tried to basically set up this ruse of a fall guy using this catfishing, correct?
Yeah, and obviously closing arguments, this is where the prosecutors really try to hammer home that the jury has heard so much. As you said, day 11, they've heard so much evidence, they've heard so much testimony. So this was, first up, prosecutors, it was their opportunity to try to wrap that all essentially in a pretty bow for jurors to say all that we've told you, all that you've heard, this is really what it comes down to. And as you mentioned, they hammered home again that they believe Brendan Banfield killed his wife and the fall guy, essentially Joe Ryan, to pin her murder on Joe Ryan, luring him in essentially through a fetish website, suggesting that he was going to come to the home to have consensual but violent, really, sex with Christine Banfield. And prosecutors told the jury that this was part of a plot by Brendan Banfield to run away with his au pair, as he wanted out of his marriage with Christine. We'll get to what the defense said in just a moment, but I think we have a soundbite from the prosecutor today. Take a listen to that right now, if we can.
Brendan stabbed Christine, let her bleed out on the floor, and then dripped, smeared, and wiped her blood on Joseph Ryan's body to make it look like he had attacked Christine. And it took a little bit of doing, but here we are, and it's his turn to be held accountable.
Interesting to note that defense attorneys, actually the defense attorney right there, he went much longer than prosecutors did in presenting his closing argument to the jury. By my estimate, I would say that the prosecutor's initial closing argument, and then she gets a rebuttal after the defense goes, was probably about 25, 30 minutes total. The defense attorney in this case, John Carroll, I believe his name is, spoke for about 90 minutes. And he spent a lot of time trying to poke holes in prosecutors' argument. He said that there was no plot, that yes, Banfield was having an affair with his au pair, but that Christine Banfield also had affairs, that they both were having affairs. He said something to the effect of, all right, he's a philanderer. It doesn't mean that he killed these people. He didn't. Banfield, we know, testified in his own defense. And his defense attorney at one point said, look, my guy didn't have to get up there. He did, because he wants the facts out there. Obviously, of course, defendants don't have to testify on their own behalf. He did in this case, which we don't always see. And the defense attorney took a lot of time today to essentially say, they've got the au pair, who you might remember, she agreed to a plea deal. So she pled down. She was facing, I believe, an aggravated murder charge as well, and got pled down to manslaughter in exchange for her testifying against Banfield, essentially. And she really corroborated in her testimony what prosecutors argue. The defense attorney said, don't believe her. She's talking to TV producers about a documentary, and her story has changed a ton of times. That's what he told jurors. He also said that, there were certain pieces of evidence that were not tested for DNA. And he argued that the prosecution either left out pieces of evidence or even might have manipulated them to fit that narrative. But again, the defense attorney took about 90 minutes to try to pull apart what prosecutors laid out. Why don't we hear from him now?
Lie and manipulate to get someone to make a statement. That's not discovering the truth. That's planting the truth.
For the attorneys and for the court reporter right now, and we'll get copies for the jurors as well.
So again, started in court today about 10:15, I would say. Those closing arguments wrapped up around 12:30, and then that is when the jury got this case and spent the next 4 hours, of course, behind closed doors deliberating. And one thing, Chris, that I'll mention, which won't surprise you given the high-profile nature of this case, but every time I've covered trials, it always just is so fascinating to me. You know, you're sitting in the courtroom with different people, so you don't really know, is this person with the media? Are they a family member? Or who are they? And I was sitting there and I was talking to folks like, yeah, who are you? And so many of them have no connection to this case. They are just fascinated by it. They've read about it. They've watched it on the news. And they wanted to be in the courtroom to hear the verdict read. Obviously, that didn't happen today. It looks most likely now that that will be Monday. If not, obviously, it would drag into Tuesday. If jurors can't reach a verdict by Monday, we'll just have to wait and see. But it is always, I think, fascinating to see that a case can pull people in so much that they drive, especially on a very cold day, out to a Fairfax County courthouse to want to be in there to experience that moment, which when it happens, when the verdict is read, no doubt will be incredibly emotional. Of course, we know that there are friends and family of Christine, of Joe Ryan, of Brendan in that courtroom. So it will be a heavy moment whenever it comes. And obviously, lots of people, again, will be watching closely.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been tuning in to these daily recaps that we've been doing, sharing their thoughts in the YouTube comment section, which we always appreciate. So with a case and that's this high profile, were there any special instructions from the judge to the jury before they left? And did the jury have any questions for the prosecutor's defense or the judge in this case so far?
So the question about special instructions, not that I heard, jurors are obviously always in a case told not to speak with the media, not to go on their devices, not to engage in any outside noise, for lack of a better term, until a verdict is reached and until they're dismissed. So not that I heard, it's possible, but not that at least was something I picked up on. To your other question about any questions, I don't believe so. The jury communicates with the judge usually via note. And from when I was in the courtroom, we didn't see that happen at all. It'll be interesting to see, I think, how long it takes jurors to deliberate on Monday. You know, typically, I was talking to our legal correspondent, Katie Barlow, about this the other day. If they go longer in their deliberation, not always, of course, it's by no means a hard and fast rule, but sometimes if they take longer in their deliberation, that might indicate something less favorable for the prosecution. It might mean they're split, they're having a hard time coming to a consensus, they're stuck on a certain point. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes them to deliberate. And of course, the judge has to have faith, as she has had to have with every weekend, that when these jurors go home, that they don't talk about it, that they don't engage in anything else, as is the oath that they swore to. So no noticeable difference in the high-profile nature of the case there, other than, of course, the fact there's so much media here and there's so many people who are here just to witness it.
All right, Sydney Persing out at the courthouse in Fairfax County. Thank you so much for your recap. Of course, Fox 5 will have complete coverage of the jury deliberations and that verdict when it is handed down, if it is handed down on Monday, streaming live right here on Fox Local, possibly on Fox 5 if we're in programming at the time. But of course, you can stay up to date with this case here on Fox Local, on Fox 5 DC's YouTube page, and streaming on Fox 5's TikTok account. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you Monday with the latest.